So for this video, we are going to go ahead and do an arena run, and we're going to explain in depth every pick that I make, covering even the cards that I am not choosing. This is something that I've done in the past, and that video was actually pretty popular, and now that we've had the mobile release, now that we've got Heroes of Skyrim, and potentially new players who have either never played Arena or are just new to card games, I felt like it was long overdue for me to do a video like this. So we're going to go ahead and start this run from scratch. Again, I'm going to discuss class choices, every card choice. So again, I apologize ahead of time if it comes off as long-winded, but that's just the way it's going to be. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to showcase some games played with the deck that we end up drafting in this arena run. So without further ado, let's take a look at our choices. Right now, what's presented to us are Sorcerer, Scout, and Archer for our classes. Now, whenever you're choosing your class, you want to keep in mind, first and foremost, what are the commons and rares in those classes that you would expect to see and that you would want to draft. Now, the reason that you focus on commons and rares is because you have a much higher likelihood of drafting those cards as opposed to epics or legendaries. So, for example, if I was looking to draft Scout because I wanted to get Ungolem because I know that Ungolem is really, really good in Arena, that's not really going to win me a whole bunch of games because the chances of me actually seeing a legendary are pretty slim, let alone seeing a specific legendary. So you're going to see more commons than anything else, and so you want to try to pick classes that have a very strong set of commons. Now, as of right now, as I'm recording this, another thing to consider are specifically what are the commons and rares in Heroes of Skyrim, because that set has a higher weight to it in terms of the cards that are going to be presented to us for drafting. So when the expansion came out, people wanted to play with the new cards, and that means draft cards with synergy, and you're not going to get the dragon synergies and the shout synergies if you're comparing the Heroes of Skyrim set on an equal footing to Fall of the Dark Brotherhood, Madhouse, and Core set, right? So it's not saying that it's an entire Heroes of Skyrim draft, but you are more likely to see those than other cards, at least for the time being. So with that being said, Sorcerer has access to some pretty solid commons. Windkeep Spellsword is fantastic. When you go to the rares, it gets even better when you consider the core set stuff, right? Wordcrafter, Shrieking Harpy, Lightning Bolt is maybe the best common in the game. So this is a fairly strong consideration. When you go to Scout, Scout also has access to some pretty solid commons and rares, specifically in Heroes of Skyrim. So in Heroes of Skyrim, when you start factoring in shouts, the Drain Vitality shout is great, and it's backbreaking if you can get it to level 3. Soul Tear is obviously much better in a constructed environment, but still pretty good even in Arena. Archer is actually pretty good as well. Heroes of Skyrim gives it access to, like, the Vanguard, for example. Now, the 1/1 body with charge for 2 Magicka might not seem like a lot, but it actually can make some pretty decent value trades and then turn around and give you a 5/5 for 4. So I'm a big fan of that guy in Arena. Again, the agility would give you access to Drain Vitality. All of these are actually pretty fantastic choices. I would be okay with pretty much any one of these, let's say, over other choices. Maybe the only thing I would consider over these would be like Mage or Crusader, just because with Heroes of Skyrim cards, both of those are absolutely fantastic as well. The Willpower Shout is great in Arena. Mage gives you access to all of the good stuff from Intelligence, plus that Shout, plus your hard removal. Similarly, Crusader gives you access to all the good stuff that's in Strength in Heroes of Skyrim, but your Willpower options as well. So, really it comes down to, as far as I'm concerned, I think that Scout is good, but probably the weakest of these three. because, again, there's so many good things available in Sorcerer and so many good things available in Archer. However, ultimately, I think we're going to go with Sorcerer. Largely because, again, Lightning Bolt, again, the strength of intelligence, but there's another common in Heroes of Skyrim that you may or may not have heard of. Its name is Mystic Dragon. It's just a 4/4 for 4, but it's backbreaking if you can play it off of Prophecy. In Arena, your deck is only 30 cards instead of 50, so every card that you draft with Prophecy already has a higher chance of being triggered as a Prophecy card. Prophecy is very, very important in Arena. So we're going to go ahead and take the gamble because we want to find Mystic Dragons and draft them and expect to do very, very well if we can hit them off of Prophecy. It is a huge tempo swing. So we're going to take Sorcerer for this run and start making our picks. So as I said before, sorry, but you're going to get some long-winded explanations from me, so, you know, buckle up. Alright, right out of the gate we're presented with Epics. This is going to be kind of a no-brainer choice, but again, we're going to go over all the options. Hrothgar Kingpin. This card is not that good in Arena to begin with, and it's certainly not good as a first pick. The 1/1 stat line for 2 Magicka is pretty subpar. He does get bigger, does get stronger with Orcs. However, there's no guarantee we're going to find Orcs. So as a first pick, this is not great. If we'd already drafted, 7, 8, 9 Orcs and we were picking him at the end of our run, that's a different story. But right now, as a first pick, I do not trust that I'm going to find Orcs, and I don't want a 1/1 for 2. Battle Reeve. This is very much like Hrothgar, an understated card for its cost. A 3/3 for 6 is not that great. This one is instead banking on friendly creatures with keywords, and then it basically buffs those creatures. Again, we have no guarantee we're going to find those, so this card is, as a first pick, feeling pretty lackluster. So the obvious pick is Night Shadow. Night Shadow is just great, period. 6/5 for 6 is great. The drain is massive. It can and will win you some games. Given that these two are so subpar as a first pick and that this one is pretty fantastic, we take Night Shadow here and feel comfortable with our decision. Alright, all of these options are pretty subpar. So, we have Restoration Tutor. This is a 3/4 for 4. Those stats aren't that great for 4 Magicka. And on summon, we heal a creature. Healing can be pretty strong in Endurance. It shouldn't be overlooked, but I don't think that it's worth the subpar stats. I would much rather prefer to have something like Healing Hands if I was going to run a heal effect. Which leaves us with the 2 equipment. So we really have to ask ourselves, do we care more about the healing or the aggressiveness in terms of trading? Right now, this early, I think you err on the side of aggressiveness. If it was later on and we felt like we were fine with our 2 and 3 drops, we might consider taking this because the gain 4 health is not irrelevant. But this is like a neutral card that is almost like Battle Rage Orc. You're paying 3 for a 2/3 stats that kind of has charge. Obviously, this requires a creature to be on the field, but you do, as long as the creature is on the field, get to make use of those stats right away. So this is a fine card for trading, right? Like if you play a 2-drop, they respond with a 2-drop. You can oftentimes plop this on your guy and take the trade. So given how subpar all of these picks are, we're going to take the Helm again because it's the aggressive one, and aggression is fine. So we go from subpar picks to pretty good picks. We're going to start with the bad one. Stealer of Secrets. It's been a theme so far for this draft. Subpar stats for a high cost. Stealer of Secrets is the kind of card that in Constructed you can build around and do some very wacky things with. However, in Arena, there is no guarantee we're going to find a bunch of actions. So drafting this early is not that great. And then even if you have, let's say you draft like 10 actions, I still don't really like Stealer of Secrets in Arena in those instances. However, our other 2 picks are great. So East Empire Crafter is a 2/4 for 3. Those are fine stats for this creature. But this says, when you summon another creature with 5 health or more, give it +1/+1 in guard. In Endurance, there are plenty of creatures with 5 health. This makes those creatures go from, good to great often. Specifically, you think of like the 4/5 vanilla orc. If you have this on 3 and then that 4/5 for 4 on the following turn, it turns into a 5/6 guard, which is great, right? Like that's Hive Defender on steroids. So, because this has decent stats on its own, the 4 health actually makes it pretty sticky, and when people see these, they tend to panic and try to get rid of them. This is actually a pretty good pick. The other pick is Cunning Ally. Cunning Ally, it's hard for us to determine if we're going to have a lot of intelligence cards this early in the draft. 3/3 for 3, same stature distribution as here, just in different spots. But a great effect. If this triggers, it is such a boon to your ability to control the board. So we have to ask ourselves, which one do we value more this early? Because we don't know what the rest of our draft is going to look like. This early, I think you err on the side of Ally. There's no guarantee we're going to get an abundance of creatures that interact with this. There's a high likelihood, but there's no guarantee. Cunning Ally, we're pretty sure we're going to draft at least some intelligence cards, and even if this only has like a 30% chance to hit instead of, we'd prefer 50% or more, but even at like 30%, this probably still beats this out. So we're going to take Cunning Ally here. Alright, so we have Frenzied Witchman. This is a 3-cost 2/1 that gives something +2/+1, so basically a 4/2's worth of stats that you split. We have Iron Scale Dragon. This is a 7-cost 7/7 regenerate. Regenerate's really not that relevant. This is really just like a 7-cost 7/7. And then we have Wrathgar Artisan. So this is a 3-cost 2/3 that has +1/+1 stats. So really you're looking at a 3/4 versus a 4/2, and then they get to divide their stats. I could go either way on this. So this is obviously the more aggressive one, but it's also more brittle. This one is more defensive, and it technically gets you more stats by 1. The reason I think we end up picking this over the Witchman is largely because while we haven't drafted any yet, we are more likely to get things that interact with orcs, and we are more likely to get things that interact with endurance cards. So we might end up with like Stalwart Ally or something later. Witchman does nothing for us in either state, so we're going to take the 1 extra stat, even though it's more defensive, right? We're going to take the 1 extra stat and the better chance at synergy. Why are we skipping the 7/7? We already have 1 late game card in Night Shadow. This early on, I don't think we need to tack on another. I'd rather try to fill out the early part of our curve. That'll allow us to be more picky or flexible about our late game threats, so we're going to focus on the 3-drop. Because early on, I really want 1-drops, 2-drops, 3-drops, so that we can establish a board presence that's really big in Arena. And with that in mind, we get shown some 1 and 2-drops. We're going to start with the bad one, Blackreach Rebuilder. This is a 0/1. Yes, it has Prophecy and Guard. Yes, it gains you health, but it's a 0/1 and it doesn't do anything for you. Doesn't trade, doesn't do anything like that. You'd have to have a lot of like racial synergies to even consider taking this, and if you've got a bunch of racial synergies, you probably drafted wrong. So we're going to go ahead and skip this one. This is a bad pick. Now that leaves us with 2 really interesting choices. One is Crown Quartermaster. This card even sees playing constructed. It's solid. It's a 1-drop. It's got a 2/1 body. The 2 attack means that it can trade up fairly well. It lets you put a Steel Dagger into your hand that you can then equip on this and trade up into even a 3 health creature, or you can save the dagger for 1 point of reach, or trading up with another creature. This is very versatile. It's an intelligence card, so it feeds our ally synergy. Midnight Snack, on the other hand, a 2/2 for 2 isn't great, but it does have Prophecy and Guard. We have no dragons, so the last part's irrelevant, but Prophecy, as I said at the start, is really important in Arena, so you should never overlook it. Prophecy Guard is actually pretty strong as well, because it can potentially stop somebody's lethal push, right? And those can win you games. So, Midnight Snack is solid. but this one just gives us more flexibility and it feeds our ally synergy. So as much as I like the snack, I think that the Quartermaster in this instance is better because again, it feeds our synergy and it's very flexible. So we're gonna go ahead and take this. Also, it's really rare that you find like good one drops, and this is one of the few in the game, so I tend to value that a little bit higher. Alright, so now we're left with Dark Harvester. This is a prophecy card, but it's not, at least this early, it's not one that I would recommend. Again, I like to fill out the early part of my curve. Prophecy is great, but of the ones you're playing from hand, this one feels pretty bad. Like, paying 7 for a 2/4 is not great. It's fantastic off of a prophecy, but really subpar if you hard cast it. So this early, again, we want to fill out the early part of our curve, so I think this is a no, which then leaves us with Ancient Lookout and Grimshield Brother. Ancient Lookout is basically a 2/3 for 2. We don't have any dragons. We're not guaranteed that we'll even draft them. If we do draft them, they're going to be expensive dragons, right? You're not going to be playing a dragon, like, you're not going to play this on turn 2 and then play a dragon on turn 3, right? So the idea of actually getting a 1/1 sentry with guard from this is pretty far-fetched. Likely you're going to play this on curve and it'll die long before a dragon even thinks about entering play. The best case scenario would be this, and then if we draft a Mystic Dragon, having Mystic Dragon be hit off of Prophecy, then you might get a guy. But for the most part, this is just a 2/3 for 2. That being said, sometimes just a 2/3 for 2 is enough. We don't have any 2-drops yet, and early game is really important. Now our other option is a Grimshield Brother. Now he's a 2/3 for 3, but he does get +1/+1 and drain when Beast Form triggers. Beast Form, if you're not familiar, will trigger every time that you break an opponent's rune while this guy is on the board. So he doesn't have to be the one who breaks the rune, you just play him, attack in, hopefully your opponent's rune breaks, and then he'll become a 3/4 drain. 3/4 drain is nothing to dismiss. However, we've already got a couple of other 3-drops. We have no 2-drops. And he's not, so like of the guys with Beast Form, of the werewolves, he's not one of the ones that you really want to play like on curve. What I mean by that is that if I play a 2-drop, let's say I play this, or even a 3/2, right? If I play a 3/2, on the next turn, I'll be swinging for 3 to take him likely down to 27. So I'm not breaking a rune yet. So if I play him on curve, he's still going to be a 2/3, which is not usually what you want. With the werewolves, you want to play them the turn that you're expecting them to trigger. That's why like Ayla's Huntmate is so good, because by the time you're playing a 4-cost one, you've played a 2-drop, hopefully swung with that, played a 3-drop the following turn, and you're hopefully in a position where that's ready to swing, so that when you play the 4-drop, you can swing, trigger that first rune, and get the benefit of Huntmate right away, right? This one is not likely to trigger on curve, so while this guy is good, and we might end up, if they're presented later, we might end up drafting one, I don't value it as high as some of the other werewolves, so we're going to go ahead and take the Lookout in this scenario. Alright, so we are being shown epics again. Funny how I gave a speech about how you don't plan for epics, and now we're seeing a bunch. But again, not what you normally plan for. I've done plenty of arenas where I've got like 1 epic. So, Dragon Cult Ghost. He's a 1/1 for 1, but he's pretty straightforward. Whenever you play him, he will exhaust your magicka, and its power and health are equal to the magicka spent. So if you have 4 magicka, he's a 4/4. 6 magicka, he's a 6/6. Arena is actually the place where he kind of shines when you do play him, because he's a great filler card, right? If you need something on curve, he's always there for you. Need a 2-drop? He's a 2-drop. Need a 6-drop? He's a 6-drop. He just kind of gives you something to do and lets you saturate, which isn't bad, but it's not something that I would like prioritize. Not say over the other two. So the other two are actually very, very good. Dragon Priest Mask. This is a 6-cost item that gives +2/+2. That alone is pretty lackluster. However, the summon is trigger the wielder's summon ability. So if you play this on like a Crown Quartermaster, we get another dagger. If you play it on Cunning Ally, then we potentially get another Firebolt. Artisan gives the +1/+1 again. So on and so forth. Then we also have Winter's Grasp. Shackle all enemy creatures. This is a pretty big tempo swing. A lot of times this either saves you from death or lets you protect your board so that you can push in for lethal. This can be used in many ways, both offensively and defensively, and people just don't plan for seeing this in Arena, so it's a great surprise card. So, that being said, you're really choosing between these two, in my opinion. I could definitely see an argument for this, but I would prefer this much later in a draft, right? I would prefer to take this if we were halfway through our draft and we knew we had a bunch of good choices with summon abilities. But if we take this and we don't draft another summon, the ones that we do have are pretty ho-hum, and paying 6 for a 2/2 item is not great. Winter's Grasp is basically like always useful, right? Like I said, it's defensive, it's offensive, it's great surprise card in Arena. So just where we are in our draft right now, I think we take Winter's Grasp. Alright, good choices. Alright, we have Royal Sage. It's a 4/4 for 4, but if you have more health than your opponent, you give each friendly creature a random keyword. If you've ever played this card in Constructed, you know that it can just win games on its own. Whiterun Protector. This is one of the Beast Form guys. 4/4 for 5 is not great, but if you do get the Beast Form trigger, it gets +2/+2 guard and regenerate. So really he's like a 5 cost 6/6 guard regenerate, which is pretty good. Because he costs, 4 or more, you're more likely to play him and trigger him on curve. And then we have Wordcrafter, which is like a Constructed staple because it's one of the best 2-drops in the game. I would almost say that maybe behind like Goblin Skulk, it might be the best 2-drop in the game. Goblin Skulk is definitely the best 2-drop in the game in Constructed, but Wordcrafter is great on curve, even if you have an empty board. Wordcrafter is great late in the game when you want to protect something else. Like the give something ward as a combat trick is so important. So as good as Royal Sage is, and it can definitely win you games, we're low on 2-drops. This is one of the best ones in the game. I think we take this, and we just be really excited about that pick. Maybe we'll get lucky and we'll see a Sage again later. It would be nice to get one, but I like having a lot of 2 and 3 drops, and it's hard to pass up one of the best ones in the game. So, now we are presented with some build-around cards and a 1-drop. So our 1-drop is Deathless Draugr. It's just a 1/1, and when he dies, he replaces himself. So he's just an attrition card. He's one of those rare, so this is a good 1-drop. He's one of those rare, like, mediocre 1-drops that you're not mad at playing. Ghostly Lookout is 3 for a 4/2. If you happen to summon a dragon, it gains ward. We don't have dragons. Good chance we might not even find any, but 3 for a 4/2 is honestly still not bad. I think a lot of people pass this over because they think, well, I can't trigger the ward. But in all honesty, like, 3 for a vanilla 4/2 isn't horrible. Lilandril Hexmage. 5 for a 4/4, so the stats aren't super great for the cost, but the ability is great. Every time you play an action, deal 2 damage to your opponent. Even if you don't have actions, when people see this, they tend to panic and try to take it out. Sadly, the only action we have is Winter's Grasp right now. And maybe a Firebolt off of Ally. So we can't really, I think, justify taking this just based on what we currently have. So it's between these two. And I mean, I like them both. However, I think Cunning Ally synergy wins out right now. As good as this is as a 1-drop, it's not great. It doesn't really trade up unless you tend to crash both 1/1s, both this and then the following one, into something. And then that's over multiple turns, and assuming that they don't have some sort of, like, 1 damage ping effect to take it out. So I have a hard time drafting this. Like, this isn't bad. It just, with us having any well, we just don't really have a lot of good synergy to, like, make this worthwhile. Like I said, this is worst case scenario. It's just a vanilla 4/2 for 3, and a 4/2 for 3 if they don't have the Firebolt does trade up very nicely. You know, 4 attack is enough to take out some of these more expensive cards. So I think we're going to go ahead and take this and see what we can come up with. Oh man. So now we have a dilemma. Falkreath Defiler is a 3/3 for 4, so the stats aren't great, but the slay effect is fantastic. If he manages to slay a creature, you summon a creature from your discard pile, and you get to choose. We have Loot. It's a 1/2 item for 1, which isn't half bad stats. The wielder is immune to silence. And then lastly, we have Little Girl. 4 cost 0/2, but at the start of your turn, it changes into a 5/5 ageless vampire with Drain. Loot is good, but like not great, and we don't have a lot of like synergy or interaction, so I think we pass here. Also, I think we pass here because both of these, in many ways, these are like the same card, right? They're both a 4-drop that, if they survive, might just win you the game. That being said, on curve, Little Girl is much scarier, and Little Girl lets you potentially come back, right? The Drain means that you can stabilize. This is really much better if you've got big things like Night Shadow that you're going to return, and if that's the case, you're likely not doing this guy on curve. So, given that information, I think we take the Little Girl here. I mean, I like the Defiler, but I think Little Girl has a much bigger impact more often. Little Girl is certainly more brittle, will probably die more often, but she demands an answer. Okay, so now we're at an interesting position here. We have Ghostly Lookout again. We have Reachman Shaman. This is a 2/2 for 2, but if it survives at the start of your turn, it buffs another friendly creature. Then we have Restless Templar. This is a 5/2 that when it dies you gain 5 health. We need some 2-drops because we would like to see this number equal to our 3-drops or even slightly higher. But this one's not very good. So I think we pass here for now and hope that we pick some up in the second 2/3 of our draft. We already have one Ghostly Lookout. Another one's okay, but like I'd prefer to not fill up on vanilla 4/2s. We're a little low on the 4-drop area, so this does help with that. But this guy's effect is much better than just being a vanilla 4/2. The 5 attack means he trades up very well, and though he is brittle, if they do just have a firebolt, you gain 5 health. So much like Little Girl, he's great at trying to help you stabilize. I think we're going to go ahead and take this. We're going to have a fair amount of like drain and life gain, so if we lose control of the board early, all of our hope won't be lost, right? We will have some tools by going this route. All right, so we did find a 2-drop. We have Palace Conspirator. It's a 2/2 for 2. Not great stats, but at least it's intelligence, which helps with the Cunning Ally. The summon is draw a card and then discard a card. So if we had drafted our Defiler, he could potentially have comboed with it. Sometimes if you have dead cards in your hand, he's just a great way to cycle through as well. Dragonplate Armor, 4 for a +2/+2, and if you have a dragon in your discard pile, again, we've yet to draft a dragon, then it becomes, you know, +4/+4. And then Mistveil Enchanter. 4 for a 2/2 with ward is not very good. However, if you have another creature with ward, he gets +2/+0. So it becomes a 4/2 with ward. 4/2 with ward for 4 isn't half bad. However, when you look at our deck, something should probably stick out, and that's that only Ward Crafter gives us ward right now. So his chances of getting the summon trigger are pretty small. So low summon trigger, subpar stats, but it is still at least a 2-drop, so I think this is the pick. Sometimes you just have to pick the card that's the least of a problem. Okay, so Stealer of Secrets. Since the last time we were shown this card, we've drafted exactly 0 actions, so still not great. We're going to go ahead and pass on this. Then we have Tome of Alteration. This is +2/+2 for 4 and draw a card. This is actually not as bad as it seems. You wouldn't run this like in your main deck in Constructed, but in Arena, it's a combat trick that cycles. Conjuration Scholar. This is a 1/2, but it also creates a 5/5 Frost Atron Aqua Guard. So you're paying 6 for essentially a 6/7 in stats, and you get a guard out of it. Now, we don't have a lot of late game yet, so really it's between this, and as much as I like the cycle, as much as I like this, I'm kind of a big fan of getting some late game, and this is one of the better cards that we can pick. So we have the Night Shadow. Again, we're kind of defensive in our build, so adding a big fat guard seems right up our alley. We're going to go ahead and pick the Scholar in this scenario. Alright. Oh, what an interesting set of cards. So, Imprisoned Deathlord. It's a 4, cost 7/7. Insert meme here. When an enemy creature is summoned, you shackle it. This card is actually not half bad if you have Silence or Silence. If you had a way to silence this guy, then you get like a discount 7/7, but we don't have it, so he's not good for us. So that leaves us with what I call the Hail Mary card, or the big fat item card. This card is oftentimes like you don't play it on curve. You usually just play it when you're desperately searching for an answer, or when you just have 2 magical left over. And sometimes you find a card that just wins you the game, and sometimes it's kind of a load of junk. Dwarven Armaments is a card that typically you use to close out games, right? It sneaks up on people. They aren't often planning on you getting like 5 extra damage from an attack. Basically, this card always lets you skip the last rune, because if you even have it on like a 1/1, that makes it go to a 6/6, and 6 is enough damage to skip the last rune, as long as you can, work your attacks in and bring them down to 6. So this card actually has a lot of utility, but having a Hail Mary isn't half bad, and this is an intelligence card, which again, we're trying to keep that in mind because of our ally. So I think we're going to go with this. That being said, if you're in the scenario and you take this card, I don't fault you. This might even be the more conservative or the safer pick. This on a Night Shadow is enough to probably just win you a game. Like if Night Shadow sticks and then you do this and you drain for 11, like that's it. But again, like this can bail you out. So we're going to go ahead and go with this. Alright. So now we have Lesser Ward, Enchanted Plate, and Iron Scale Dragon. Now it just changed since our last assessment, and we do now have the Scholar as well, so we have some late game threats. I don't think again, the regenerate really doesn't matter, so I don't really think that like the vanilla 7/7 for 7 is worth it. So we're really looking at, this is basically like a combat trick that cycles. This is like the cheaper version of Tome, but you just don't get any offense, right? Like this is for like where you would trade even, but instead your guy survives and you draw a card. Similarly, Lesser Ward kind of lets you do the same thing. It's where you would trade even. The only difference is that you don't draw a card. Now, if we had stuff with Ward synergy, this card would be great, but we don't have a Daggerfall, we don't have a Breton Conjurer, we don't have anything like that. So right now, you're really saying, okay, do I care more about Cunning Ally synergy or drawing cards? As much as I like jamming intelligence cards, I think drawing the card is more important. Alright, so another 2-drop, or Iron Scale, which we've already talked about ad nauseum, and Stalwart Ally. So we already have an intelligence ally. Now we can add the endurance ally and just go 50-50 and coin flip our way through. Sad as it sounds, I think that's what we're going to do. Stalwart Ally, if you can get a 3/5 guard for 3, it's such a big boon. Again, the allies are, they can really be backbreaking in Arena if they trigger. So in many ways, it's oftentimes the right play just to gamble on them, because if they do hit, they're great. In a vanilla 2/3 for 2, even though we desperately need 2-drops, just isn't selling me on the high roll potential of this card. So I think we're going to take the ally here. Whoa, whoa, whoa. So I apparently clicked on Dragon's Fury, And I apologize, I didn't think that I was up high enough. I think that I was down here. So yeah, we drafted a Dragon's Fury. Thank God it was a removal and not a useless card. That being said, there were some other good choices in there. So go back, pause the video, take a look at what they were, and understand that this isn't necessarily the best pick there. I was not intending to do that. Oh, the joys of recording, right? I guess that teaches me to just like not click randomly, but again, I totally didn't think I had my mouse cursor there. All right, so sorry about that, gang. Let's look at these picks. We have Encumbered Explorer. This is a 2/3 for 1 Magicka, but after he attacks, he shackles himself. This card is great for trading up, so you play it as a 1-drop, and then you hopefully trade it into, you know, a 2-drop or a 3-drop. That's basically it. Rift and Pickpocket. 2/2 for 4 is not statistically great. However, you reveal 3 random cards from your opponent's deck. You choose one and draw a copy of it. Much like Moment of Clarity, though this pulls from every card in the game, Rift and Pickpocket is a card that you can use to hopefully dig for a card to give you the answer that you need or the card that you need. The only difference is that these are cards coming from your opponent's deck. So sometimes you get what you want, sometimes you don't. That being said, I'm a huge fan of this card, but we also have as a choice Sorcerer's Negation. Silence a creature, then deal 2 damage to it. It's removal and its silence. This card is fantastic. You definitely want to take this here. This is this deals with ward creatures, so Wardcrafter, you know, heaven forbid if your opponent drafted Daggerfall Mage, just deals with it. But because of the silence, sometimes, like if your big guy gets shackled, you can just use this on your own creature to, you know, as long as it's big enough to survive the 2 damage, silence your own guy to unshackle it and then still swing in. Like, because it's both silence and damage, there's a ton of versatility here. This card is great. Alright, so now we have a utility card, a giant 6/6 guard, and then a guy that is annoying, right? So a 2/2 for 3 is pretty subpar stats. However, whenever you summon another creature, you give it +0/+2. If this guy sticks, he gets really annoying really quick. Like, he's one of those creatures that he dies easily, but they kind of have to target him. 6/6 guard for 6 is fine, right? Like, it's a big body, it's got guard, so it might save you. A Night to Remember is one of those like interesting utility cards where if we had a lot of cards with summon effects, like good summon effects, we would really consider this. But honestly, other than Conjuration Scholar, and then maybe if our Cunning Ally triggers, that's about it. Nothing else that we really have has good summon effects. So I think we can pass on this. So we just have to say, okay, do we want like another late game threat / defensive tool, or do we want to be annoying as all get up? It's kind of a tough call. I think we take the late game threat. We have a decent number of 2 and 3 drops already, and we're not, you know, given some of our other 3 drops, we're not likely to play him on curve. So I think that we just pass on him. I think we're going to go ahead and take the Tyrant here. Armorer is great, but... Alright. So, we have Wisp Mother. It's a 5/5 for 7. When you summon a creature that costs 2 or less, summon a copy of that creature in the other lane. That's really good. Waves of the Fallen. Transform all enemy creatures in a lane into 2/2, basically stricken Druggers that are just vanilla 2/2s. Or transform all friendly creatures in a lane into 5/5 hulking Druggers, so vanilla 5/5s. It's a cheeky utility card, right? Like if they've got a big full lane, then you can kind of nerf them. If you've got a big lane of cheap guys, then you can buff them. But at 8, and given that it's not like outright removal, it's just transform effects, it's kind of subpar. Then we have Mage's Guild Retreat. This card can be bonkers if you have enough to support it. So it's a 7 cost. but at the end of each turn, if you play 2 actions, you summon a random Atronach. It's not fully random. You're not going to get like Iron Atronach. You'll get one of the 3 that High Rock Summoner would give you. So Flame, Storm, or Frost, right? The 5/5, the 7/5, or the 5/3. That being said, we only have 4 actions. So the likelihood that we're playing 2 in the same turn after we've also played this is pretty slim. It's the only reason we're passing, because again, if you have a bunch of actions, this card's really good. This isn't hard removal. We don't have enough to support this. We're going to take the Wisp Mother by default. Not only is the card good, but worst case scenario, it's still a 5/5 body. Okay, so here we have Dragon Plate Armor. Again, we don't have really dragons to support it, so it's really like a 4 cost +2/+2. Then we have a dragon that could trigger all these dragon cards, but again, for the umpteenth time, it's Iron Scale Dragon, which is pretty lackluster. If we were shown Mystic Dragons for every Iron Scale that we have seen, this would be an absolutely insane draft. So we just got the wrong common dragon presented to us. We desperately wanted Mystic Dragons, not Iron Scales. Then we have Mentor of the Watch. So a 2/2 for 3 is not that great, but at least it does have guard. The big deal here is that it has Prophecy, and as I said at the top of this video, Prophecy in Arena is a pretty big deal. The summon effect is also kind of nice because it can, give our Restless Templar, for example, guard. So not only does this act as a speed bump, but then this is a speed bump that also gains you health. And, so on and so forth. Giving something else in your hand guard is nice. Really, you're playing this for the Prophecy, and also we're going to pick it because the other choices are just not very good. So there you go. Alright, we get shown Fire Breath. This is the Intelligence Shout. It's not a very good shout. Paying 3 to do 2 damage is pretty lackluster. It's not really worth it till you get multiples of these, and given that we only have less than 10 picks remaining, we're not likely to see multiples, at least not in the amount that would make this good. So I think we pass here. So that leaves us with Stalwart Ally or Stonechtooth Scrapper. Stalwart Ally, again, really, really good on curve, especially if it triggers. Stonechtooth Scrapper is just, if you played Hearthstone, it's Chillwind Yeti. But ironically, in this game, that's just good enough. His big body and stats are oftentimes, very desirable. But that being said, if I'm going to pick between these two, I want to pick the one that has the, I think, greater potential to swing a game, and that would be Stalwart. So I think we're going to go with this. Alright, it's a good thing we went with Stalwart, because now we're going to take a Stonechtooth. Oldgate Warden is just not very good. Guard and Regenerate are okay, but it doesn't trade into anything, so it's a glorified speed bump. You're basically like this. This might as well say, 2 Magicka, gain 5 health, right? Like, you're going to play it, they're going to trade 5 damage into it, it's going to die, it's not going to help your board position. Yeah. Crystal Tower Crafter, 2 for a 1/1, so the stats aren't great, and it gets bigger when you play actions, but just like with our Mages Guild Retreat before, I would like to note, we only have 4 actions, probably not enough to support a card like this, so that leaves us with Stonechtooth Scrapper. Given that these are both subpar, now we take the big guy. Alright, so, Grim Champion. 4 cost 2/2, but when a creature in this lane dies, give it +1/+1. Now, bear in mind, that's not just your creatures, it's when any creature in the lane dies. So if you play him and you trade one of your creatures into one of your opponents, he goes from a 2/2 to a 4/4 if they both died. That's really important to keep in mind. We also then have Mages Guild Retreat. Again, we already talked about, we really don't have enough to support this. Last, we have Keeper of Whispers. This is a 3 cost 3/4, and your friendly creatures are immune to silence. So, 3/4 for 3 is actually really solid stats. So really you're asking yourself, do I want the guaranteed good stats or the creature with upside? Usually, personally, I tend to err on the guaranteed good stats. and so I think we're going to do the same thing here. Immune to Silence is actually pretty solid utility as well. So yeah. Alright! Oh, I'm still curious about what we skipped with the Dragon's Fury, and I'm going to be really upset if we did miss out on one of these, but we got finally shown a Lightning Bolt. Pro tip, if you're ever shown a Lightning Bolt, you draft a Lightning Bolt. I don't care what else is there, you draft a Lightning Bolt. So, Helm, again, we were shown this earlier. The health is nice, but not really necessary. Lesser Ward is great for trading, but Lightning Bolt is reach, because it can go direct damage to the face. It's removal, because it can take out creatures. It has prophecy. It is literally everything you want in a card. If you're shown a Lightning Bolt in Arena, you draft a Lightning Bolt. Alright. These are very similar picks to the last time we were shown Negation. So we have Negation again. Again, this is Silence a creature, deal 2 damage to it. Just like last time when we saw this card, we have Rift and Pickpocket. I really like Pickpocket, but I don't like it more than Negation. Removal is just that strong. And then lastly, we have Companion Harbinger, however you want to pronounce it. I think Harbinger is correct, but I hear people say Harbinger and it makes me giggle. Sorry. Enough with the side tracking. He is a 3/3 for 3, which honestly isn't half bad. And then when he hits his beast form, he gives friendly werewolves +1/+1. We really didn't end up with much in the way of werewolves, so he's a 3/3 for 3. Certainly not better than Negation, so we're going to take this card and be really excited that we got a pair of them. Alright, Epics. These are all interesting. So, Gravesinger, a 6/6 for 10. At the start of your turn, summon the highest cost creature from your discard pile and give it charge. At the end of the turn, put it on the bottom of your deck. This card is great in Arena if you can get it on the board. Its biggest drawback is that it costs 10 and it does nothing to immediately impact the board. So most Arena games are actually over by the time you hit 10 Magicka. The ones that are not over by then, you're usually looking for some sort of splash play. So something like Manticora is great because it comes down and immediately affects the board. Oftentimes it's a 2-for-1 at a minimum because you're going to kill a creature and they're going to trade into it with the guard. This, on the other hand, like you're going to play this in the shadow lane, hope that at that point they don't kill you, and then hope that they also don't kill it. That's a lot of hoping. Ice Wraith. This is a 2/2 for 4. At the start of your turn, put an Ice Spike into your hand. Yet another card that does nothing to help your board state when you play it. Only this one is significantly more brittle. At a 2/2 body, this thing likely will die, and even if it does survive, like Ice Spike is okay. If you're new and you're not familiar, Ice Spike costs 2. It does 2 damage to your opponent. Only your opponent, you can't target creatures with it, and then you draw a card. Lastly, we have Lion Guard Strategist. This is a 2/3 for 4, so its stats aren't that great, but when you summon another creature in this lane, give it Ward. If you can pair this with at least one other creature the turn you play it, or if it survives and you can play one or more creatures, he pays for his cost and value, but much like the other picks shown to us, by himself he doesn't do anything to impact the board immediately. So all of these are rather interesting. I could see an argument made for the Strategist or the Gravesinger. I think Ice Wraith is easily the worst of them. So we have to ask ourselves, what are the chances that we're going to be playing Strategist and something else, right? So really it'd be like on turn 6 playing this in a 2-drop, on turn 7 playing this in a 3-drop. I'm not sure that's going to happen very often. And then even more so, like, are we going to play him on turn 4, or are we going to, you know, because that's like a low tempo play. You play a 2/3 on turn 4 to then hope maybe next turn to get the Stone Tooth, hope maybe next turn to get the Templar, get the little girl. That's a lot of hoping, and you don't want to put yourself behind. So I don't feel like this is the right play. I don't feel like this is the right play, which leaves us with this. Again, a lot of times this is just going to be a dead card, but I think that the upside is worth it because getting back even like Night Shadow and being able to swing because it has charge for the drain is great. If you get back like Conjuration Scholar, then it'll summon the 5/5, and then the Scholar will go to the bottom of your deck, but you'll get to keep the 5/5. So like that's not half bad. If you're in a position where you don't have any of these left in your graveyard, getting Restless Templar is pretty fantastic as well, because you can keep crashing it into things and then it'll go back to the grave, and then you'll keep getting it back and you'll keep gaining the 5 health. Same thing with Conjuration, right? If you do have this out, you can just keep like suiciding the 1/2, so it'll keep resurrecting the Scholar and you keep getting 5/5s. So I think the upside probably means Gravesinger here. Alright, so we have Fire Breath again. It's really a lackluster shout. And then we have Midnight Snack or Camelorn Hero. Camelorn Hero is a 3-cost 4/2, and it does 2 damage to your opponent, so it provides you a little bit of reach. Which honestly, this guy's pretty good. Midnight Snack. We still haven't really found dragons. So it's really, do we want a 2/2 Prophecy Guard for 2? Or do we take the guy with decent stats and reach? I think we take the guy with stats and reach. I think Camelorn's just strictly better. I really like Prophecy, but this guy just has no interaction or synergy with the things we did end up drafting. Alright, so again, if we were shown a Mystic Dragon for every Iron Scale, this would be such a good draft. Sadly, we were not. So we also have Stonetooth Scrapper. We already have one. Again, he's good, but not great. This is not good. Palace Conspirator, not great. In fact, if I had to like weight the cards, I would say this is strictly better than this in almost every case. But we're pretty light on 2-drops, and this shows 7, but it's kind of a lie because we have an Enchanted Plate, a Moment of Clarity, and 2 Sorcerer's Negations, which means of our 2-drops, only 3 of them are actually bodies. It's Ancient Lookout, Ward Crafter, and Palace Conspirator. We need more 2-drops that are bodies, so we're going to take this. And then that leaves us with Wisp Mother again. We already have one. Hackwing Feather. This card's okay, but honestly, it's pretty subpar. Again, Regenerate is nothing to write home about. So it's really like 3 for a 1/3, and those stats are not great. And then a filler guy. So, with that being said, as good as Wisp Mother is, we only have 4 creatures that actually interact with it. Well, 5 if you count the Crown Quartermaster. So I don't think we go all in on taking a second one. I think 1 is enough. And I don't think we take this, which means we're just going to take the filler guy. Because then, you know, worst case scenario, he can be just a 2/2 for 2 on curve if we need that body. Or, like I said before, he's just a filler. So the Ghost will be our last pick. And that will conclude our draft. And now it's just a matter of diving in and playing some games.
Who will prevail?
Alright, so we are diving into our first game with the deck, and we are looking for some early game. This is interesting because we have the ring, so ideally we'd like to find 2-drops, but we also know our deck is kind of light on them. Gravesinger goes back for sure because it's too expensive, but keeping removal is oftentimes fine. Keeping a 3-drop is likely going to be in our best interest. Although, we drafted a fair number of 3-drops, so it's more than likely we'll find at least a 3-drop, but really I think we want to hunt for a 2-drop. So on second consideration, I think we're going to throw both of those back. Worst case scenario, we likely just end up with another 3-drop, but yeah, see. So, just a different 3-drop, but at least we have something. Trying to hunt for something to play on turn 1 off of the ring and give us some board presence, I think was worth that mulligan there. Oh, interesting. Doing this for 2, not all that great, but not all that bad either, because we can follow up with this on the following turn to turn it into a 3-3. So unless he plays like a 3-2 for 2, it'll likely survive that encounter. I think we're going to go ahead and do that. Again, just a filler card, a 2-2 for 2, not great, but it's really important that you get a board presence and you try to fight for the field lane. Whoever controls this basically like has initiative in many ways. Alright, so we do want to contest this. This will contest this even without its own buff. So we're going to go ahead and do this to pump here, just so that we can swing for more this turn. And then we just basically hope that he doesn't have something saucy for 4. You know, obviously a big guard would really, really suck for us. Hive Defender would be, like, bad. Alright, that's not half bad. Because we can trade and survive. So, like, we can trade and survive, we can trade and survive. We can also go ahead and take the Cunning Ally. We hit our trigger. So, we're going to go ahead and use our last ring charge to clear that. And so now, we are out of ring charges, kind of a bummer. We are also, you know, down on cards. We have 3 cards in hand to his 5, but we have 3 things on the board. So, alright, we're probably going to Fury that just so that he can't trade and can't draw cards. But let's make some attacks before we make that decision.
I have you now.
Let me at him.
Alright, no prophecies. Things are looking good. So we have to ask ourselves, do we care if he draws 2 cards? He's already got a fistful of cards. If he trades here, kind of a bummer. Is this really worth protecting a 2-1, or do we want to develop like a 4-5 or a 5-2? I really feel like developing the 4-5 ends up being better. And we want to do it in the field lane because we really want to control this. So now he has the dilemma, right? Does he want more cards? Because if he takes more cards, like, he's already got 7 in hand. If he wants to really go to 9, then sure. But he still has to fight with our board, so...
This one will get what is needed.
He's going to take the cards, which we're perfectly fine with. So here's an interesting situation, right? We've got this, which we could just use to pick this off. Or we can trade here. Now, the reason you're likely going to choose trade in this scenario is because they are on Spellsword. Spellsword traditionally doesn't have a lot of ways to do direct damage. Outside of Crushing Blow, it's just not what they do, right? They have hard removal. So having this have 2 health as opposed to 5 health, probably irrelevant. So saving this as removal for something else that's probably of higher priority is going to be a better play for us. So we're going to go ahead and just take that trade. Get our attacks in.
I have you now.
Always try to crack your runes before you play cards, because if they had a prophecy, you want to be able to react. And now we'll just go ahead and play this. So the reason we play this is not only is this attack for 5, so it's aggressive, but this was a 4-drop, and these are 2 3-drops, and on next turn when we have 6 Magicka, we can saturate and play both of these next turn. So that's why you go with this. Or we can just play a Scholar. That's also fine. We're going to do this either way. Let's go ahead and take this here because that survives. Trade even here. So that Scrapper was essentially like a 2-for-1 for us. Do we want to take this trade? I think we just go with the pressure, all things considered right now. We're in a pretty good spot. We're taking him down to 6 and then dropping this bad boy is pretty good. It's got to deal with this, and then we still have this that swings for 5. Like, we've got a nice wide board presence. Things he could have, right? Like, Immolating Blast would hurt us pretty bad, right? But that's an epic. In an arena, you don't typically plan around epics. I mean, you can, but in this case, you know, you play the percentages. Yeah. So we get to concede on our first victory. As you can see, take control of the board, use your superior stats, make trades, and hopefully get a victory.
Combatants, begin!
Alright, so we're going into game 2 of our run. And we're going to be going second against Crusader. There's a chance that I might not show all of the games because, you know, it could be as much as like 9 games in a run, and the video will likely be long already, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We're going to mulligan all of these. We want, again, just like our last game, right? We want 2 and 3 drops. This doesn't really count as a 3 drop because it requires something on the board. And there we go. So always a bummer when you draw your prophecy cards in Arena, but at least we have a curve. So we're going to go ahead and lead off with our Word Crafter in the field lane so we can hopefully take control of that. And then we'll go from there.
We'll see how they like someone who fights back.
Alright, so we could actually Hornhelm that and swing. Or we can Mentor to give this guy guard, and then as he grows in size as the game goes on, he could become a pretty massive guard. I actually really like that play. Hornhelm is just asking for us to like eat hard removal, right? Like against Crusader, there's a strong chance of like piercing javelin or something. Though you might have Grizzly Gourmet. But there's also Devour at 4, right? Hornhelm would keep us out of Gourmet range, but not Devour range. It's a tough call. I think we're going to go ahead and swing, though. And then I think we're going to go ahead and play our Mentor here to trade and give our Ghost Guard. Because again, hopefully this guy will grow in size, and at some point, when the time calls for it, we can just play a massive guard.
For Skyrim! For Skyrim!
Oh no, that's
As
interesting.
long as I draw breath.
He's gonna try to bleed us there. Alright, well now, I'm just gonna go ahead and take the Hornhelm play, since we don't have anything else. So Devour would be bad for us. Next turn, Javelin comes online. Devour is extra bad because if he has a dragon, it also would mean that his dragon would get ward, but we're going to hopefully try to save this ring charge for Conjuration Scholar. So, drawing something here would be decent that we can play. That's probably good enough.
Your blood will spill!
We don't want to play this over here because the 2/2 can trade into it. So that does at least push us over there. We could have just played this as a 4/4 guard. Protect the ward, but that's a good sign. That means he probably doesn't have Javelin. He could have a charge creature. He could have like Underworld Vigilante or something in that vein. But so far our Word Crafter is doing work. This is exactly why I was excited when we saw this come up as a pick, right? Because as a 2-drop, it's just really, really good. I mean, there's a reason it's a staple in Constructed.
Come on then. I'll
Oh,
even let
that's
you
what he
swing
was.
first.
Tell me your injuries.
That's what he was doing. So he's gonna pump that bad boy up. Kind of ironic that he chose not to break the rune, even though this was going to anyway, but we're gonna take our damage here. Couple of different things that we could do, right? This could trade in and then we could bolt it, but I really want to play the Scholar, so I think we are just gonna do that.
Conjuration mage never stands alone.
These two by themselves don't trade into this, so I think that we just pass. No reason to suicide this quite yet. Usually strength has pings, so he would have to use like multiples to do the 2 damage to kill this. Oh, he's gonna give my guy guard. But contest with a pretty solid 6/6 here. Should get some more damage in though before it's all over, which is good for us because we do have the lightning bolt for some reach. Well, if you swung with this, you have to commit that. I mean, you know I'm just going to trade this here, but like he has to commit there at that point. Yeah, that's still the right call. Let's go and do that. Swing for 5 first.
Your blood
We'll come in like this.
Let's begin the lesson.
Like that. And so this is what I was talking about, where Winter's Grasp can sometimes be a great tempo play, right? Right now, just Winter's Grasping one creature seems pretty lackluster, but if we pass, right? If either one of these survive, then we have lethal because of Lightning Bolt. So by just Winter's Grasping, so this can't trade, and forcing him to deal with both of them, that puts us in a pretty decent spot. The other option is we could just play 6/6 guard and accept that we are sacrificing there. 6/6 guard seems good, actually. Let's do that. Again, Immolating Blast might punish us. He doesn't have enough for Dawn's Wrath. Now he could have a Javelin. If he trades here, Javelin's here. That's still enough to present lethal. Could have a big guard. But he's got to have more than that, because there we go. Alright. That is game. So we're going to go ahead and go with this trading here. And we're going to Lightning Bolt this one. Now the reason we Lightning Bolt as opposed to waiting to go face is because with this attacking for 6, we can skip the last rune and assure our victory. Hooray!